Prince family, it's Lauren. I am back with another one of our authors. We just released a book yesterday on February 10th. That book is Mistress and Mage by Blythe Brandenburg. And I am joined with her here today, and she's going to be talking about that book with us. Blythe, why don't you go ahead, tell us what Mistress and Mage is all about?
Mistress and Mage is a fantasy romance, and it's about a woman who she's lost her husband. She discovers that he ran up enormous debts, and the lender is being extremely nasty about it. But she also, because she's an aristocrat, she's a lady, she doesn't have any marketable skills except possibly being a governess. And she takes a chance on a rumor, and it turns out, well, he doesn't need a governess, he needs a mistress, but only a fake mistress, so he can infiltrate some of the high class, high society gambling dens to hunt down a magical creature. And so that gives us a setup. And of course, they go after the magical creature and fall in love.
I love it. I'm so excited for this one. Where did the inspiration for this story come from?
Um, Early last year, I had been working on a much more serious piece of, writing, and I just got to a point where it's like, you know what? It is January. It is cold and dry and gray and awful, and I am going to write something that is going to have a happy ending. And I just said, you know what? I love Bridgerton and all the fancy dresses. I love
Oh,
anything by Jane Austen and all the Regency romances. And I love really elaborate fantasy worlds with lots of races and lots of magic. And I also am a big fan of the Three Musketeers. Two of my cats are named after musketeers. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to put as much of that into the inspiration to write something in a fantasy world that I've already played in. And that's where it came from. Just taking all these different things that I love about historical romance and high fantasy. And I've written 10 short stories in the same world where it takes place. So had some really solid concept of the world and what was going on to build on, which made it a lot easier.
that's awesome. I love hearing that, it was partially inspired by Bridgerton. Readers, if you are like me and anxiously waiting for the second part of Bridgerton to come out,
Mhm.
you should pick up Mistress and Mage.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about the dynamic between our two main characters? Because this one is unique.
Yeah, I think it's really common when with the setup to have, especially in something based on historical novels, where she's very young, she's very shy, and this is done to protect her in some way. And in this case, Delphine is not young, and she's not particularly shy. And her sense of humor is often sort of poking fun at herself. Varric is the one who is shy. You can imagine that he is the very nerdy, like grad student who has been studying quantum physics and knows a whole lot about something that only four other people in the world have ever heard of. And he has never had a girlfriend. He is just stepping into this whole thing to play pretend without anything to go on. And that presents a relationship where she has to take the lead in even just acting like they are a couple when they go out in public.
Yeah, I love that. When I saw the concept for this book and kind of the different tropes. So we've got reverse age gap. We've got fake dating, which I love. I was very excited. And Varric, do you want to talk a little bit about what Varric is? Because it's not quite human,
He is
correct?
not human. So that's part of what I love about fantasy is you have all the different races.
Hmm.
And with fantasy, they can be anything. And Varric is a Jaglin. And they are bigger than humans. On average, they run 6 to 9 inches taller than humans would if you were just to take a population average. And they are green. They're very green. I've got a friend who cannot read about them because she cannot handle the green. And the males have horns and they have cat ears and they have different patterning on their skins, like stripes or dapples. So he looks very different. And there are parts of the world where Joglin are the predominant species, race, however you say it, um, but not in this particular area. And so that is part of why he is going to have trouble getting to where he needs to find this creature, is because he is not going to be easily accepted by anyone in the city. Um, it adds an extra layer of dynamic to it. But they're actually one of my favorite races to play around with and come up with.
Yeah, I love it. And for our readers, if you haven't followed Blythe's social media account, she's also an amazing artist. And the really cool thing about this, that at least for me, when I read fantasy, and there's, introduction of other races and different types of
Mhm.
creatures, sometimes it's kind of frustrating because you're like, I don't know what to picture because I don't know what
Mhm.
this looks like. But Blythe has drawn her characters. And so you can go see what Varric looks like if you go follow her, which it is very cool. And yeah, I like the green. I think the green is fun. So
Yeah, yeah. I like the different colors. That's part of it. I'm like, it's just fun. It's fun to draw. It's fun to
yeah.
color and play around with the different skin tones. So,
I bet. I love that. I love that you not only do that, but that you post it too for your
mhm.
readers to see. So speaking, just kind of sticking on Varric for a second here. So you mentioned he's very highly educated. You kind of compared him to the nerd, in grad school. Particularly in magic. But along with that, like you mentioned before, he is emotionally inexperienced, never had a girlfriend. So, what did you enjoy most about writing a character who is brilliant,
Mhm.
yet somewhat unprepared for intimacy?
I think the most fun I had with that was just getting to be the person who's shy
Mm,
from that perspective, because I am really shy, and especially when I was younger, was really shy. And being able to put that into a character in a place where it made sense, and it can also be a little bit funny.
mm,
It does lead, to some situations where they can laugh at one another because it's awkward and strange. Things don't just go perfectly right off the bat. And to have someone experiencing their first love and attraction is always a fun thing to write about. And to remember what it was like when you're young and there's that moment and you're like, oh goodness, what is
yeah.
this now? It
I
was
love
also a
that.
lot of fun just thinking about, like, there's a scene where they're going through some magic books, and it was just fun to be sort of silly with what sort of names would, like, college level
Mm.
magic books sound like, because we always have all those big fancy sounding math book names or physics and chemistry.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think that's so fun. I also feel um like this book in particular is really important too for the romance genre, because it's more common to see that flipped. And so that's where that trope I mentioned earlier, reverse age gap, comes from, is it's usually the female that's inexperienced. And so I bet that was really fun to kind of flip that and play around with what it would look like on the other
Mhm.
end, and
Oh
kind
yeah.
of add to something that I feel like is somewhat lacking in the genre. Um, so let's talk a little bit about Delphine. You'd mentioned that due to this debt and needing to kind of figure out her late husband's problems, basically, that he
Mhm.
left
Yeah.
her, she agrees to this contract that could potentially destroy her reputation,
Mhm.
um, stepping in as somebody's mistress, fake or otherwise. So how did you balance for her character that desperation versus agency when kind of writing about her choices?
That was actually one of the hardest parts of the book, I think,
Yeah.
because it had to be desperate enough that she finally said, what, I'm just going to go for it. But I still, like you said, she had to have agency. It had to be her choice, because if she gets trapped into it, well, then, Varric isn't much of a good guy, if that's how that goes.
Yeah.
But she does it. It was having that scene, and it's in there, where she just makes that decision that she doesn't have any good choices. And a lot of people get to that point in their life where it's like, I don't have any good choices. So I'm going to pick the one that is least bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where she starts out from. And she makes sure when they negotiate the contract, which it is an actual contract, names signed to it and everything, that part of it is that she will get passage back to her mother's home country because her mother was from one country and her father from another. So she's in her father's country, which is where she was mostly raised. But if she can get out of the country, then the ruin won't matter. That has to be part of the contract for her. And that gives her some power there where she can say, listen, this is what I want. This is what it's worth to me to lose absolutely everything I have left here.
Um, Along with that, kind of going into the reputation portion of that, in this novel, reputation is almost treated as currency because I know you
Mhm.
also deal a lot with Varric's reputation as well, being the species that he is and not quite fitting in. So, what drew you to explore social ruin as a real tangible threat for these characters?
That's a big part of the historical romance category.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick up Regency romance, I mean, even if you're picking up Pride and Prejudice,
Mm-hmm.
a woman's reputation becomes this very big deal as part of a lot of the stories. So some of that just came from my love for historical romance, but also part of it is being old enough and looking around and realizing there are things that our society gives moral value to that really are neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And even like, I don't know if some people remember, there was a point where like a respectable woman did not wear bright red lipstick or
Mm-hmm.
bright red nails. Those were considered inappropriate and trashy. Now they're pretty common now,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all these rules that society builds up around us that really don't have any moral meaning. It's just what one group who happens to be in charge kind of decides is the acceptable, normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fluid. Tattoos at one point were not acceptable. They've become more acceptable. But it is taking a look at that and being like, so much of this is just a construct. And if you go to a different place or a different time or even a different subculture in our country, those rules change.
Mm-hmm.
And why are we following rules that are so fluid and changeable if they don't have any, moral background? They aren't there to prevent harm or keep someone safe. They're just there to tell people if they're in or they're out.
Mm-hmm. Um, Kind of along with reputation, talking more about this fake mistress, fake dating trope. Um, so fake dating is a favorite of
Mhm.
romance readers, I think, throughout
Love
the genre. But what did you want to do differently when approaching that trope, that common trope with this story?
I think, in part, just putting it as a formal relationship that they're pretending to. Because I think fake dating often starts as something very casual and on the spot. Oh my gosh, I need a date to the wedding. I don't want to go alone. Can you just cover for me for a day or for a weekend? And it's very short term, which
Hmm.
which I think is why it's so fun for like rom-coms because there's so much potential for funny moments where things are awkward. But putting them into, okay, you're faking a formal relationship. You signed a contract. This is something that you are doing as a business arrangement
Mm.
instead of, say, covering for a friend or playing along with someone you just met for a short amount of time. They're in it for you potentially a month or more, depending on how things go, and they know that. But I think that adds a dimension to it that's a little more serious. And you don't often see it as something that's like a formal relationship. Being a mistress in this world is something women choose to do as a profession, just
Hmm.
not ladies.
Yeah.
And we do get to meet some of the fellow mistresses who are very proud of their profession.
Oh, fun. I love that. I love that that's included as well. Yeah, yeah, I think that's so true that you mentioned, the time and it's not just a quick little, I need
Mhm.
a quick date here. So I like that. It's almost borderline Not quite, but like arranged marriage almost, as
Yes.
far as,
Yeah, yeah.
being a little bit more
It's
long term.
kind of halfway between, I think, arranged marriage and fake dating in a way.
Yes, yeah, yeah, I love that. Um, so can you talk, since this is not just a romance, but a fantasy, can we talk a little bit more about the world building for this novel and what that was like as a writer?
This particular world actually came from two ideas that I had been trying to make work for a long time. And when I say a long time, like Jaglan, that Varric is, this green race of people, came to mind when Wicked first came out as a book.
Oh, wow,
And
yeah.
I read it, as soon as it came out, there was so much chatter about it. I read it. And that's where I started playing around with, I wanted this race that was green because I was fascinated with the story. And so it's been a long time that I've been playing with things. And a few years ago, I was invited to contribute to a fantasy romance anthology and was just like, I'm just going to smash these two ideas for a world together and see if it works. And it did. Whatever was not working before, when I decided to put them together into this kind of fantasy adventure world I wanted to do, they worked together. And I got a lot of short stories out of it. So, but I, I'm the sort of world builder. I've got the maps drawn.
Mm,
I've got, lists and lists of things over there, but it's an Earth-size world. But for a standalone book, I had to shrink that down to one little section of it.
mm,
So the whole story happens in one city, and everything that they reference is just one little area that's not any bigger than England, France, and Spain, if
okay.
we were to compare. So it's a really small part of a very big world, and it's just showing a little piece of it. So I have so much background that's built around this that never comes into the story, even though I know it's there. And for me, that makes it fun. For the people who've read any of my short stories that are out, though, they will find some Easter eggs in the novel.
Oh, fun. I love that. Um, and then expanding that just a little bit further, can you talk a little bit about the magic system in this
Yeah,
novel?
that was one of the pieces I was having trouble making click because it's elaborate.
Yeah.
Everybody has magic. And part of that was because I'd previously written a series of novels that are unpublished where magic was very rare. And I just wanted the complete opposite. So everybody has magic. There's magic that's based on your emotions that people use to connect with other people, and they can use it to cast spells on things so they can affect emotions. So parents might use it to make a particular blanket very comforting to their child or a particular meal.
Mm,
And then there's magic that is based on the personal energy, and that one can physically interact with the world around them and can be used to do a lot of things with magic and spells. It can build like guard wards on windows and doors. It talks about particular people who can use this to make materials they're creating stronger. So she references a glass maker who used to use it, and things like that. So everybody has that, but not everybody can use it for everything. It's just
mm,
like there are certain skills here where, like, sure, everybody can do math, not everybody can do calculus.
mhm.
Um, everybody can hammer a nail, but not everybody could build a house
Right.
because those are particular sets of skills. We can play
Mm,
with clay, but only the people who are potters can make beautiful cups and pots out of it. So it takes a lot of skill and training, which is part of what sets Varric apart is that he's had years and years of training in how to use and develop and involve these different types of magic. And there's also elemental magic, which comes into play because the creature they're chasing is counted as an elemental creature.
mm.
And so this is something that exists outside of people in the world that can be used, but is also extremely dangerous.
Um, as far as the historical aspect of it goes, you'd mentioned to me a little bit earlier when we first started kind of gearing up for this release that you pulled some things from real life and then you also kind of mixed some things up and moved some things around to kind of give the story your own flair. So,
Mhm.
do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things maybe that you pulled from real life and then some of the other things that you kind of made your own to make this unique world?
Yeah, I always reference Bridgerton when I talk about it because it's so well known.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the real world and what sort of era I would like it to emulate, I was looking earlier at kind of say the late, maybe the late 17th and early 18th century. And for reference, that's um, pre-Revolutionary War up through French Revolution time period. If you watch the Scarlet Pimpernel, anything that Marguerite wears would look like a dress that Delphine might wear.
Okay.
Um, so it's that older time period. And
Mm.
also, like if you think about the gowns that Marie Antoinette is always portrayed in, those very elaborate Baroque Rococo gowns with the rosettes and the bows, that's that kind of time period.
Mm.
And for me, so for like the outfits and the costumes, I wanted those to emulate that time period. And I did a lot of research into undergarments and garments and what they would be called and how they would get dressed. And there was one point I was doing research, and one of my daughters has done costuming for theater. She even went to the International Thespian Festival for her costuming that she did for a part in Pride and Prejudice. But so
Cool.
she's my go-to for things. And but
Yeah.
I called her over and I was like, they used pins. They didn't use ribbons or buttons to connect things. They pinned them all together. So she's taking off her gown, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to figure out what they did with all the pins. Oh, which I mean, that's for me, that's part of the fun part. And looking up, all
Yeah.
right, what sorts of doorknobs did they have at that time period? But some stuff I didn't worry about because it fit with what I wanted the
Mm.
world to feel like. And just went off of, I hate to say I'm writing on vibes, but sometimes I was just writing on vibes.
Yeah.
And there are a few things in there if someone is really being specific and they're like, well, it's early 18th century and matches didn't exist. That's one of those times where I'm going to go, well, you know what? It is actually fantasy.
Yeah.
Big green guys with horns don't exist either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say it'd be kind of interesting if someone had a problem with one of the really small details as opposed to, other
And
species and
fun
magic.
details, like you think about performances.
Hmm.
You go see performances, you go see the opera, the play, you go to, outdoor performers in this setting, but they've all got magic. What would it look like if every performer and every performance had the potential to be strengthened or added to with magic? So when they do go to a series of outdoor performances or they go to the opera, I had to think through how is this going to look when you've got magic added to it?
Mm, fun. I love that. Um, so is your novel considered open door or closed door for our romance readers?
It is open door. It has one open door scene that is written very euphemistically.
Okay.
So
So
I'm
as
like,
far
it
as
is
heat level,
spice, but it is about, I would call it paprika level, but I have met people that said anything open door is like five peppers for them. So
yeah.
I know it is a really individual scale. So it's
That's
either to
that's
say
true.
there's one open door scene
I love it. Paprika.
towards the
I've
end.
never heard that used before, and I love that. Because some people do think paprika is really spicy, and other
Yeah,
people
yeah.
it's like nothing. So
So yeah, it's spicy but very low spice compared to a lot of things that are out there.
yes, yeah, wonderful. So with all of that being said, all the things that we've talked about, what kind of reader do you think would love this book?
I am hoping it will appeal to anyone who is in that overlap of I love the fantasy stuff, but I've also really enjoyed, like I said, Bridgerton and Jane Austen. I
Mm.
think if someone's coming in from reading a lot of fantasy, that will have a set enough fantasy world with enough magic and world building that they don't feel like they've been cheated out of that part that they love.
Mm,
But if someone is coming in from mostly reading romance and they're coming into this brand new fantasy world, that it has enough elements, particularly from historical romance, that they can slide into the world and feel comfortable still.
mm, yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
if you've never read fantasy romance before, I think it would be a good introduction to the genre. As a standalone, you're not investing in a huge series at this point. You can just step in and recognize these familiar pieces and tropes set in a world that is brand new.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great. It's very accessible for I feel like those different genres, readers coming from those different genres, definitely. Is there anything else that you want readers to know before picking up and reading Mistress and Mage?
I would say I mentioned the anthologies I'm in, and those are all free anthologies on Amazon. They're titled A Season for Romance, and then the subtitles are Spring Blossoms, Summer Simmer, and Fall Flames.
Mm.
But picking up those and reading any of the stories in those that are labeled as Elfball, those are in the same world. And those are the ones that if you've read them, you will pick out those little Easter eggs I left in there. One story in particular references Delphine's great grandparents,
Oh, fun.
which is a small but important plot point in the story. You don't have to have read it to understand the story, but I think people who've read the short story will find the novel a little extra entertaining because of it.
Yeah. Would you recommend one before the other? Would short stories before the novel make more sense or the other way around?
You could read them either way. I would read the short stories first, but part of that might just be because the short stories were written first.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and that's, I had all that world building in them to fall back on.
Mm. So what can our readers expect next from you? Are you working on anything?
I am actually. Delphine mentions she has a brother, Alastair, and I am winding up Alastair's love story, which
Yay!
happens just a couple months after Delphine's ends. And in Delphine's world, one of the problems is there's a war going on between her father's country and her mother's country, and that's why getting back to it is difficult. Alastair gets called in to try and end the war, and events ensue.
I'm so excited. Wonderful. And then finally, I always like to ask so our readers know where can our readers find you and connect with you online?
I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads as Blythe Brandenburg. Uh, Look at it. If you just look up the name, it should be pretty easy to find. I am most active on Threads, but I said I'm on the others once a day or so. And I do have a Facebook page where I post art and updates and videos and things. So whichever platform someone's comfortable on, I'm probably going to be there. The exception is I'm not on Blue Sky because it's huge and overwhelming.
Oh,
It just feels
yes.
like walking into a crowd of 10,000 people every time I try to go on.
I know what you mean. Definitely. Well, readers, please do make sure one, check out Mistress and Mage. It is out now. So make sure you pick that up and also make sure to connect with Blythe on social media. Like I said, especially if you want to see her character art of Varric and Delphine, because that's always really fun to see. So, well, thank you so much for joining me today. I enjoyed talking about this book, and I'm really excited for our readers to get their hands on it.
Thank you for the chance. People that know fantasy authors know that we like nothing better than to sit here and talk about our worlds.
Yes. I bet. Well, you put a lot of effort into it, so you might as well get to talk about it a little. Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Like I said, Mistress and Mage is out now. Visit www.fiveprintsbooks.com for more information, and we will see you next time.